Okay, so first off, we have, you guys know you have we introduced the assignment last time, right? The Satyagraha all over assignment. Yeah, Tiffany already did it. She already turned it in. So nicely done, Tiffany. All right, so let's pick up our Indian resistance here. Okay, so help me out. Let's ground ourselves here. Ilha, why don't you start us off? What's the Charu Chara incident? What's the importance of the Charu Chara incident? It should be one of the last things we talked about.
Don't know.
Oh, I'm pretty sure we did it. Drew's saying we did it before, but Drew tries to answer every question, so I want to try to get some other people involved. Drew, I appreciate it. I'm just trying to get some other people involved. All right, Wentao, what you got, man?
I don't really remember either.
How about you, Mike?
It was some protest that went bad. That's all I remember. And then like Gandhi had to stop it or something.
Okay. All right. Mike's got most of the answer. All right. So Char Chara incident, it takes place in Uttar Pradesh, which is the really densely populated part of India, in the north center. And Char Chara incident is a protest that goes bad, the way Mike says it, right? And it goes bad specifically because Hindus bring weapons to the protest, and they actually shoot some cops. And they shoot the cops in Gandhi's name, right? In Gandhi's name. What does Gandhi do in retaliation to this? Drew, what does Gandhi do in retaliation?
He ends up shutting the whole movement down.
Yeah, he shuts the whole movement down, right? Gandhi's like, that's not what we're like. He's like, that's not how we're doing things. That's not what we're going to do. So hold on, I'm getting feedback on something. Hold on. Okay. Sorry, I was getting like speaker feedback. Okay, so yeah, Gandhi shuts the whole movement down. How did the British respond to Gandhi? What did the British do to Gandhi, Yash?
They arrest him.
Yeah, they arrest him and they throw him in jail. They sentence him to 6 years, but he serves 2, right? And while he's in jail, what does he do?
He writes a book.
Of course he does. He writes 4 books because that's what revolutionaries do when they're in jail, right? Is you write a book. All right. So, this non-cooperation campaign represents here all through the 20s. This stuff is going to start to escalate more and more. Okay. As we move towards the late 20s, we're going to get something called the Simon Commission. The Simon Commission is looking at this. Now, this is connected to the Statute of Westminster. We did the Statute of Westminster in our South Africa chapter. Look through your South Africa notes real quick. Flip back to your South Africa notes. Find Statute of Westminster. Do any of you guys remember what that was? When you find it, somebody unmic yourself and tell us what it is. Drew's looking it up on Google, not his notes. Come on, Drew. Come on, man. Do the work.
Doesn't it establish the Commonwealth?
It does. That is one of the things it does, right? It also, what does it do in regards to independence?
It sets up a standard for how these countries can leave.
Exactly, right? But Kai, does it, nicely done, that's good. But Kai, is it setting this out? Hey, Kai, why don't you put your camera on so we can see you, man? Join the crowd, be part of the group. Be part of the group. All right. So, but Kai, are all of the nations of the empire going to be independent?
No.
No, who is?
Only it was only like Australia, New Zealand, and what was it? Canada?
And who else?
Oh,
help him out, Tiff. Tiffany, help him out.
Oh, South Africa is also a part of it, but then they got
and one more. One more.
Oh my. I don't know the last one actually.
Anybody, unmic yourself, help them out. What's the last one? Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, and Ireland. Okay, you guys need to have this in your brain. This is something you need to be able to talk about. You need to be able to answer this on tests. Okay, you're worrying me that you don't have this. So the Statute of Westminster lays out that all of the white colonies are going to be able to become independent, right? Notably absent from our list of colonies that become independent would be India. India is not part of it, okay? So England basically says India can't be part of it because India is filled with all these barbaric brown people who just can't possibly rule their own country. They just don't have the brain power to do it. They just don't have the ability to do it, right? And some good old-fashioned 19th century racism kicking in, right? This is good old-fashioned imperial racism. They're saying, you know, Indians are just too dumb. They're just too barbaric. They just can't. The Indians, of course, disagree. So the Brits are going to commission something called the Simon Commission. And the Simon Commission is basically a group of 7 MPs from Parliament. It's a minister of Parliament. It's a like a senator, right? The British version of a senator. And these 7 MPs travel to India in order to inspect India and see to what extent can India govern itself, right? In theory, the Simon Commission is supposed to be evaluating whether or not the Indians can handle independence, okay? In practice, what do you expect the Simon Commission to say? Ilha, what do you think? What is the Simon Commission going to say? You know enough now. You can predict this, I bet.
Probably that they're not capable of independence.
Bada bing, bada boom, circle gets the square, right? Simon Commission, of course, is going to come back and they're going to say, you know, Indians are just too chaotic. There's just too much going on. India just can't handle it. They just can't do things on their own, right? This is going to cause protests across India. Everywhere they go, there's protests in Bengal, in Delhi, in Mumbai, right? In Calcutta, right? Like everywhere they go, there's protests. They get to Punjab, and in Punjab, they have some of the worst protests. Okay, the protests are being led by Lala Lajpat Rai. We haven't talked about him yet, but he's actually been one of the leaders of the movement all the way since like the early 1900s. He's close personal friends with Tilak. Okay, he's close personal friends with Tilak. He joined the movement way back. He was part of the movement before World War I. Okay, and we just haven't talked about him yet. He's leading the protest in Lahore, the city of Lahore. Today, Lahore is in Pakistan. It's the 2nd largest city of Pakistan today. Okay, and Rai is a Sikh. Okay, he's from the Pakistani side of Punjab, right? So he's a Sikh, and he's leading this protest, and he's leading these protests in Lahore, and the protests start to turn violent. The British are facing protests all over India, but the Muslim and Hindu protesters have a tendency to kind of regulate themselves, right? Where they don't get out of control. Okay, on the Hindus, they have Gandhi constantly trying to cool the movement down a little bit, right? Gandhi's trying to regulate the movement. He's kind of like a Nelson Mandela effect, right? The way that Nelson Mandela was kind of cooling Umkhonto we Sizwe, right? So Gandhi acts as that kind of cooling effect on the movement. And then Jinnah is also the cooling effect on the Muslim side of the movement, right? There's no one on the Sikh side who's the cooling effect. And so Rai is their leader, and Rai is comfortable with violence. He's much more comfortable with violence, right? He's like a Tilak type person. And he's leading this protest. The British open fire. The British start to beat them all with clubs, and they get them all. They actually beat Rai to death. He dies a couple of months later but they like crack his skull open and commit brain damage on him. He never recovers from it. He dies within a few months. Okay, one of the heroes of the movement, the undisputed hero of the Sikhs, and he gets killed. This guy, Bhagat Singh, assassinates the British soldiers who do that. He assassinates the British soldiers. He is also a Sikh, but he's not really a Sikh. He's not, as you can tell, he doesn't wear his turban. He doesn't have a beard, right? He's ethnically Sikh, but he's not religiously Sikh. He, on the other hand, is a communist. He's a communist. This is going to enter our communism. He's a Soviet-style communist. Like, he wants to overthrow the government and replace it with a communist government. His organization is the Hindustan Socialist Republic Organization. They will eventually rename themselves the Communist Party of India. Yeah. So we're going to get some communists involved in here now as well. Singh is going to be arrested. Singh is arrested and he is executed, but the damage is done. He is already becoming a folk hero amongst the movements. Okay. The Simon Commission is a glorious failure. The Brits think that the Simon Commission is going to be like cooling things down and convincing the Indians that the Brits are like taking incremental steps towards change, but it backfires completely, right? The only thing anyone remembers is the great hero of the movement being killed and then the execution of the hero that avenged him, right? That's the only thing people remember from the Simon Commission, and it becomes a real problem, okay? All throughout this, we're going to have some violence keep showing up. A lot of times you're going to find Sikhs attached to that violence because the Sikhs are like not really, they're kind of marching to their own drummer. They're kind of marching to their own drummer on this, okay? All right, so let's talk about satyagrahas. All right, Wentao, remind me, what is a satyagraha?
Satyagraha was like the idea of like holding onto the truth. And
Okay.
it came from like the one where it was to do no harm.
Okay, so it comes out of the idea to do no harm, the Hindu idea, right? And it means to hold on to the truth, but what does it mean if I say there's a satyagraha going on in the city today? How would you understand that? How would you understand that statement, Yash? If I say there's a satyagraha happening in the city today, how would you understand that?
A non-violent protest.
Yeah, some kind of non-cooperation, probably a protest of some kind, maybe a boycott or a strike, right? Right? So satyagraha, Wentao's correct. It has that philosophic meaning, but it also has the practical meaning of a nonviolent protest, right? It's the same word, two meanings. We have a lot of satyagrahas that are happening all through the late 20s and the 30s and the 40s. I cannot detail them all out because there's way too many of them. That's what the assignment is for. Okay, you guys will do that assignment. You're going to detail out a handful of them. Tiffany, you already did it. And you did a good job. So nicely done. That's why you're my favorite, Tiff. Yeah. But I'm gonna detail out a couple of them because it gives you a good kind of a flavor, right? All right. So the one I'm going to look at is the Bardoli Satyagraha. Bardoli Satyagraha. Bardoli is the name of a town. It's the name of a town in the state of Gujarat. Okay, Gujarat is a central state. It's a central state near Mumbai. All right, so Bardoli is the name of this town. This is where we're going to start seeing kind of the way that these things are organized. Okay, Nehru makes an arrangement with the town leadership for the Satyagraha to start. Okay, Nehru makes arrangements. Gandhi arrives and Gandhi gives a bunch of speeches and inspires everybody to do it, right? And then Patel and Petit are going to carry it out. We're going to see that. We're going to see that pattern going on and on and on. Okay. Nehru is the organizer, Gandhi's the inspiration, and Patel is going to carry it out. He's the executor. He's like executing the plan. So you should be asking yourself, who the hell's this Patel guy, right? We haven't mentioned him yet. Well, here he is right here, okay? His name is Vallabhbhai Patel. You don't say the extra B, you just say Vallabhbhai Patel. But he's more popularly known as Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel. Okay, he's like probably our third in our like trinity of Indian leaders, of Hindu leaders, the trinity of Hindu leaders, right? Gandhi, Nehru, Patel. Okay, Patel will go on to be member of the government and a really, really important member of the government all the way into the 1960s, right? He's going to be an important person throughout this, okay? Patel, do you guys know what Sardar Patel means? Yash or Dhruv, do you guys know what it means? Yash says, don't ask me anything about India. He just shakes his head every time I ask him about India. You guys know what Sardar means? No? All right, Sardar means chief, Chief Patel. And they use it like a first name, right? Like people will refer to him as Sardar Patel as if it's his first name, okay? It means chief. You don't get a nickname chief if you're like a warm and fuzzy guy who hugs people, okay? All right, Patel is got kind of a hard edge to him, right? He's kind of a hard edge guy. He's pretty conservative. Once we start establishing the government, you're gonna see this like push and pull of Nehru and Patel. Patel's on the right side pulling towards conservatism. Nehru is on the left side pulling towards liberalism. Nehru is pro-Soviet Union, Patel's pro-America, right? That they're gonna be kind of pushing back and forth. They're kind of be like rivals, you know? And Patel has this reputation of being a guy who gets the job done, right? And sometimes that means he's the enforcer, right? Sometimes it means he's like the enforcer. Mitjaben Petit, she's the woman right here in the picture, right? She's also involved here. And she is going to be one of the most important women in the movement. She is kind of like Patel in that she's somebody who can just get stuff done, right? Gandhi inspires people and she gets stuff done. She largely organizes the women. As it turns out, the women in all these little towns, they respond better when there's a woman telling them what to do. That makes sense, right? It makes sense. If you've ever met a woman, knowing you guys, I know that there's kind of shaky if you'll ever meet a woman, but if you've ever met a woman, you'll know that women generally don't like to be told what to do, right? And so Mitjaben tells them what to do, right? Am I wrong, Tiff? Nope. See, Tiff can confirm it. All right. So anyway, so Mitjaben's she's kind of the executor of the plan with. Now, the way that this Bardoli Satyagraha works, okay, is it's a tax Satyagraha, that they're trying to not pay taxes. They find that not paying taxes is a pretty quick way to get the British pissed off at you, right? Is that you don't pay your taxes. And so they stop paying their taxes. And so the British are going to come to the town of Bardoli and they're going to enforce the tax law. And they're going to forcibly take the valuable stuff out of the town. Okay. So what Patel and Petit do is they get everybody in the town to gather everything of value, everything, including food, including money, jewelry, clothing, everything of value. They strip it out of the town, they take it off into the forest and they bury it. They bury it. They put it in boxes and baskets and things and they bury it in the forest. They take the livestock and they lead the livestock off into the forest so that the cows and chickens and things, are all out in the middle of the forest. Okay. And so when the British arrive in the town of Bardoli, there's nothing of value in the town. It's just a bunch of rundown buildings and beat up old furniture, and that's it. There's nothing left. And the British come in there and they say, your town hasn't paid any taxes. And Patel meets them and he says, what are you going to do about it? Town has nothing of value. You barbaric British people have stripped them of everything of value and there's nothing left in this town. Right? Now the Brits know that he's lying, but they can't do anything about it. Right? And Patel says, maybe you should just keep on walking because there's nothing here for you. Eventually the British back down. Right? This is one of these moments where Patel is gaining his reputation, right? Gaining his reputation of being a badass. as he like talks down the Brits, and it works. They back down. This is going to become an inspiration for a bunch of other satyagrahas up and down the coastal areas. They're going to be, satyagrahas where they like, strip out the entire town, and you're going to get multiple towns worth of people where they strip out an entire town into the forest. The British show up, and then they bring it all back and strip the next town, right? As the British leave town A to town B, town A stuff is all over in town B, and then the Brits head over to town B the next day, and all of town B's stuff is in town A. Right? That they're doing this like shell game with everything of value, basically leading cows through the forest and stuff like that. Right? That the British can't collect taxes if there's no money, if there's nothing valuable. Right? Because the British start like taking a cow, right? If your family doesn't pay taxes, they just take your cow or something like that, right? And Hindus don't eat beef, but they do eat dairy, right? You need that cow for dairy, right? Okay, this is a good example of this Satyagraha. It also gives you a good example of the kind of role Patel is going to play. Okay, he's not going away. He's an important dude. He's going to stay with us for a long time. He's not going away. Cool. Are you guys good on Bardoli Satyagraha? Okay, we're good. Okay, let's do probably the biggest, most important Satyagraha period, the biggest one, and it's the Dandi March. Okay, the Dandi March. Make this the next big number. All right, the Dandi March, or the Salt March. Dandi is the name of the beach. Dandi is the name of the beach. And it's a beach south of Mumbai. South of Mumbai on the western coast of India. Okay. So the British have been taxing everything, right? Everything that they're taxing. And the British are restricting Indians. They're saying you cannot, everything you have to buy from the British, everything you have to pay a tax on, right? And the Swadeshi movement is this powerful movement to make India more independent, right? Make them get their own stuff. One of the taxes that is particularly offensive to Gandhi is the salt tax. Right? And Gandhi says salt is literally free. Nature gives us salt. It's free. And we've been gathering our own salt for tens of thousands of years, right? Since 60,000 BC, we've been gathering our own salt. India has always had its own salt. It doesn't need to buy salt from some rock in the northern inland, right? And so Gandhi decides to do a march to the sea. He does a 250-mile march over a month. It takes about a month, and he walks 250 miles across from like the center of India all the way to the coast. Okay, he starts off the march with about 70 people. And by the time he makes it all the way to the sea, he has tens of thousands of people with him. Okay, again, Petit is right here. Mithuben Petit's right here. Nehru is not here. Nehru, interestingly enough, told Gandhi that this was a bad idea. Nehru was wrong. So, but he told him it was a bad idea. Once it started working, Nehru organized a bunch of other salt marches, right? But in the beginning, Nehru thought Gandhi was just being weird. Oh, well, you can't win them all. All right, so, but Petit is part of this. We're also going to get Saranjini Naidu, right? She's going to be, she's a great poet at the time. Her nickname's the Nightingale of India. She's a great poet. And Gandhi is going to bring, Naidu is going to be like one of the leaders of this movement. She's going to be walking with Gandhi for like the whole time. She's one of those original 70, so is Petit, right? Gandhi's careful to make sure that women are always prominently placed here. Okay, the Salt March is going to include a lot of women in the movement. Okay, we have Gandhi's consciously trying to fight the sexism of Indian culture at this point. He's trying to include women, and Naidu and Petit are both part of this. Okay, we're going to read one of Naidu's poems in just a moment, but for now we're just going to leave her here. She's a poet. Unfortunately, she dies pretty soon. She dies like right after independence. She dies of just health issues. She has health issues. Unfortunately, Petit will be around for quite a while. All right, so Gandhi marches to the beach. he marches to the Dandi beach. And on the Dandi beach, he then goes into the ocean. He goes into the ocean and he bathes himself in the ocean. This is like the stereotypical Gandhi that everyone has in their mind, when he's got the staff and he's got the homemade like cloak around him and stuff, really skinny dude, right? This is like the image that everyone has in their mind of Gandhi. This is like 1,000 statues in the United States all have Gandhi like this, and like 700 out of 1,000 statues are Dandi marked, right? Where he's in this pose. Okay, this is stereotypical. This is maximum Gandhi. Okay, so he gets to the beach. He bathes himself in the ocean, and then he reaches down to grab the salt crystals off the beach. That as the low tide pulls away, the water dries and it leaves salt crystals on the rocks and stuff, right? And he grabs the salt crystals and he says, "With this, I have shaken the foundation of the entire British Empire." Right? You get it? Salt shaker. No? No? All right. Anyway, he says, "With this, Tiffany, these are the jokes. I can't help you with every joke." Right? She's just she's just shaking her head at me. All right. Anyway, so he says, "With this, I have shaken the foundation of the British Empire." Right? From this point forward, he calls for all Indians everywhere to march to the ocean and get your salt. Free salt from nature. This is going to result in a month-long demonstration where Indians across the entire country, from the southern tip of Tamil Nadu, that's all the way on the bottom, right? That's the pointy part on the bottom. The southern tip all the way to Bengal, to Calcutta, to Mumbai, all the way to the shores of Pakistan, right? That the Indians are all going to walk to the ocean. We're seriously, like, no joke, we're talking like thousands and thousands and thousands of people doing this. Okay? And it's going to be this massive, massive movement across India. The British are going to respond with varying degrees of violence. In different states, it's different, right? The end result here is nearly 80,000 people arrested. 80,000. 80,000 people arrested. That's a lot of freaking people to throw in jail. Okay? They're also going to throw Gandhi in jail again. They're going to throw him in jail. He's at this point, I think he's going to spend 3 years in jail. I think. Don't worry, he writes more books. Don't worry. But they sent him in jail. In May, we're going to get the Darsana Satyagraha. Keep this in the same number. It's part of the Salt March. Okay, this is like a smaller Satyagraha within the Salt March Satyagraha, right? So this is at the same part. It's near the Dandi beach. It's near the place where Gandhi was, and Gandhi was arrested. And his men, his people, including Naidu, they decide to march on the Darsana Salt Works. So Darsana is the name of the salt works. A salt works is basically just industrial salt, right? It's like a commercial salt factory, basically. So the Indians decide that they're going to take over the salt works, that they're going to just march in and they're going to take it over. Okay. This ends badly because the salt works are owned by the British. And so the British send their troops there, and the British end up attacking and beating down 6,000 people. 6,000 people, many hundreds of whom die after sustaining severe like skull fractures and brain injuries and stuff. The big problem here is that the entire world is watching. Gandhi's not stupid, right? They brought movie cameras. They brought news cameras. They brought photographs, right? And even when they weren't allowed to do it, Petit has the women hiding cameras in their dresses and stuff, right? They're not stupid. This is all on film and it's broadcast around the world. And so the entire world watches the British beating the crap out of just housewives and regular people, and all they're doing is walking to the beach, walking along the beach, right? From this point forward, it's collapsed. The British are losing control of India, right? This is too big. It's too big, and it's going to continue. The Satyagraha is going to continue all through the 30s, but the British are never going to regain control. They're never, from this point forward, the British, you can just see public opinion, global public opinion is turning on the British. Also, public opinion in London is turning on the leadership of the British, right? The British people are turning on them, turning on this, that this is so big and so bad, right? It has the same kind of impact that like the Sharpeville massacre had in South Africa, right? Also the same kind of impact as like Birmingham in the United States, right? It was just a moment of such intense violence that it just showed that this movement couldn't be stopped. Okay? All right, that's a good place to stop with that. But I do want to read this poem real quick. I do want to read this poem. It's a good poem. It's by Naidu, right? This is one of the examples of her revolutionary poems. Gandhi would get up and say some inspirational speech, and then she would read a poem to make the poem, you know, nice, to make it nice. Okay? All right. Let's go with who do we got here? Who wants to read? Who can read nice and clear for everybody? Mike, pick a number between 1 and 5.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4. Tiffany, tag, you're it.
In the but how do you say that?
In the bazaars of Hyderabad.
What do you sell, O merchants? Richly your wares are displayed, turbans of crimson and silver, tunics of purple brocade, mirrors with panels of amber, daggers with handles of jade. What do you weigh, O ye vendors? Saffron, lentil, and rice. What do you grind, O ye maiden? Sandalwood, henna, and spice. What do you call, O ye peddlers? Chessmen and ivory dice. What do you make, O ye goldsmiths? Wristlets and anklet and ring. Bells for the feet of blue pigeons, frails as a dragonfly's wings. Girdles of gold for dancers, scabbards of gold for kings. What do you cry, O fruitmen? Citron, pomegranate, and plum. What do you play, O ye musicians? Sitar, sarangi, and drum. What do you chant, O magicians? Spells for the
Eons.
eons to come. What do you weave, O ye flower girls, with tassels of azure and red? Crowns for the brow of the bridegroom, chaplets to garland his bed, sheets of white blossoms new garnered to perfume the sleep of the dead.
All right. Thank you, Tiff. Okay. All right. This poem is 100% a revolutionary poem. It's 100% a revolutionary poem, even though on the surface it maybe doesn't look like it, right? Yash, can you connect this to the revolution?
I guess it's showing like all of the independence and unique things that India already has, and that India's had, that it doesn't need to depend on the British for anything else, since it's already such a rich culture.
Okay. All right. Okay, because we have a lot of things that are being produced here, right? They're all Indian goods being produced. Okay, Mike, what else can you say?
I don't know how to add on to that.
Oh, come on now. Yash is correct, but he's not complete.
I don't know how to expand that idea.
Okay, Mike, we'll come back to you, okay? Think it through a little bit more. All right, how about you, Kai?
I'm not sure, but I think it's trying to say like their the stuff they're selling them is crap, and that they can do better.
Does this sound like Naidu is proud of the Indian products, or that she doesn't like the Indian products? Is she proud of the things the Indians are making? Yeah, I think so, right?
Oh, I'm saying like the British. Letting them.
Oh, that the British stuff is crap. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Who can unmute their microphone and connect this to one of the vocab words that we've used this quarter, this chapter?
Would it just be like the Swadeshi movement in some ways, right? So
Good. All right. Yash, connect it to the Swadeshi movement for me.
well, it's like about self-sustainability, right? So all of these stuff that they have here are stuff that has been made before the British came and stuff that can continue to be made even after the British are here. So it's like they can be self-sustainable on the creations that they've already had.
Yeah, I think that's really good, right? You want to be able to connect this into Swadeshi, and that's one of the vocab words you need to be comfortable using, right? That's that self-sustainability. Okay. I think this is also a call to action, right? Who was she calling to action? Wentao, who's she calling to action?
Everyone. Pretty much.
Yeah, give me more than that though. Flesh out your.
So pretty much just everyone who's creating and doing stuff, like the merchants, the goldsmiths, the vendors.
Right. I think that if you picture in your mind, right, that Naidu traveling around the country is constantly talking to people who they're trying to encourage into movement, right? And she's going to get all these people to say, well, what can I do? I'm just a musician, right? I'm just a magician. I'm just a peddler. I'm just a maiden. I'm just a fruit vendor, right? What can I do? I'm just this guy, right? And she's saying, look, even if you're just a musician, you can be part of the movement by playing the Indian music. You're a fruit vendor, sell Indian fruit, right? You're a peddler, you sell the Indian goods, right? You do the silversmithing, you do all these things that you take pride in your Indian craftsmanship. Take pride in what it means to be an Indian and step up. Okay? It's Swadeshi in that they're self-sustainable. It's Swaraj in that they're rising up to rule themselves. Right? Okay, so this is a really good example of her work. And she has a lot of this like revolutionary work that she has, right? Where Gandhi will come and give us like a philosophic, moral justification for his work. Patel will tell us how to get it done, right? And then she gives us this poetry like packaging on it to make it nice and palatable for people, right? Because a lot of times people will just kind of glaze over a little bit when Gandhi's sitting there talking about philosophy for 40 minutes and the rest of the country's like, dude, what's the skinny guy talking about? What the hell? You know what I mean? And she's like, hey, here you go. Here's a beautiful piece of poetry. Poetry lives in your head in a way that nothing else does, right? Poetry is like expert level language, right? Like it's the greatest form of language there is. Cool? All right. The reading for this week. The reading for this week is the discussion. It's a couple of chapters out of this book. Which is a nice big. It's a nice big like survey history of India. It's one of the books I read last year when I first started this class, and he's really good. So John Key, he's a Brit. He's a Brit, but he's really good at like Asian history and Indian history, right? He's written a ton of books about it. Okay, I took out two of the chapters. I took the chapter about the actual independence itself, like the dealing with World War II and the end of the Swadeshi movement and the independence itself, and the chapter about partition. That's where India is going to get divided into Pakistan and India, right? Those two chapters are like vitally important, and they're also pretty complicated. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of like place names and a lot of that stuff that's going on, and it's complicated enough that if I were to try to teach all of you in like lecture form, we would be here for like 5 weeks, and we just don't have that time. We have to get to post-revolution India, so you guys have to do some of the heavy lifting on this. You have to read these two chapters. Okay. In class, we've been reading it. We started reading it today. We spent about 40 minutes reading it in class. You guys are gonna do it on your own. You'll do it on your own, but I'm happy to discuss it with you if you find something that you don't understand or something like that, something that stands out to you. Just bring it to class on Thursday and you could just say, hey, page whatever, we can look it up and see, okay? If you guys ever want print off copies of stuff, you can come in. I have a stack of print offs if you want also. If you happen to be in the school for something else, you're welcome to stop by and grab a printed copy if you want. Okay, I think we're good, though we do have a quiz. Let me give you the code for the quiz. You guys ready? Okay, the code for the quiz is mongoose. As in, if you live in rural India and have a cobra problem, you probably need to get a mongoose. But then you'll have a mongoose problem, and so you need to figure something out for that. Right? Okay. So that's the quiz. We did that today. So please, right as soon as we hang up, please log in and do that. Cool. Do any of you guys have questions or problems or comments or anything? If you don't have anything, you're free to go. If you need a question, just stay on and I'll chat with you.